Welcome students, we will examine M.K. Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's differing viewpoints on India's social system during the course of today's session. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, India's principal architect, and Mahatma Gandhi, the father of nation, had much in common. Their attitudes to social reforms and the specifics of political freedom were likewise in stark contrast. Gandhi's plan was highly all-encompassing. It never permitted political freedom to be separated from social reform. Both Gandhi's and B.R. Ambedkar's criticism of foreign clothing and Manusmriti were not merely expressions of passion. Instead, they had the impact of making their fellow citizens prisoners and enslaved people. There is nothing new to be said about the Gandhi-Ambedkar caste dispute because it has been widely read and extensively discussed. The perspective of Gandhi and Ambedkar might be contrasted. On the contrary, they were both social reformers battling the ingrained vices in society. However, a thorough reading of the research in this area frequently and readily portrays Gandhi as being apologetic about the caste system. India underwent a social reform movement while under British rule. Indian social reformers were crucial in eradicating outdated traditions and practices in Indian society. The Indian social stigma was untouchability. Mahatma Gandhi and Ambedkar were the modern Indian leaders who battled against the untouchability system. Each of them had a different plan in place to address the issue of untouchability. Dr. Ambedkar thought that untouchability was terribly for the country as a whole as well as the untouchables. For the country's integration, it would be risky because class and caste systems are the foundation of untouchability. They must be eradicated from society. In comparison, M.K. Gandhi thought that the Hindu religion was only sustained due to its caste-based foundation. Different castes are created solely to serve the needs of the society. He thought the Varna system was organic. The Varna system is the process that established man's work before his birth. He also believed that the Varna system prevented conflict between the two classes and the class warfare. He was in favor of Varna system, which forbids individuals from choosing their own businesses. This is where Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi varied in their thoughts, and their ideological differences set the base for the caste debate in India. To start with, we can see the overview of both the leaders. M.K. Gandhi, one of the most significant individuals in Indian history in the modern era, was the Indian independence activist Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was essential in the fight for India's freedom from British control. Millions of Indians were influenced by his non-violent method of protest, like civil disobedience and boycotts, to participate in the independence movement. His vision and leadership played a crucial role in obtaining India's independence in 1947. Gandhi is renowned for his non-violent stance, which he coined Satyagraha or truth force. His non-violent resistance tactics have influenced social movements all over the world because he believed that non-violence was a potent weapon to bring about social and political change. Gandhi was a fervent supporter of Swadeshi or self-reliance and exhorted Indians to shun British products in favor of those created in their own country. He thought that Swadeshi would make India more economically independent and less reliant on foreign forces. Gandhi had a strong commitment to social changes in India. especially those that promoted gender, caste, and religious tolerance. He campaigned to advance the rights of women and members of religious minorities as well as for the elimination of the caste system. His initiatives aided in the development of a more tolerant and inclusive society in India. Gandhi thought the caste system, also known as the Varna system, had a place in Indian society, but that it needed to be changed and reinterpreted in accordance with his ideals of social justice and equality. According to Gandhi, the initial purpose of the Varna system was to divide the population into different occupations depending on each person's aptitudes and skills. However, the Varna system had grown rigid and hierarchical over time, and people were now subject to prejudice based on their social standing and place of birth. Gandhi believed that everyone was created equal and that no one should be subjected to prejudice because of their caste or family history. He thought that in order for India to gain true freedom and independence, the caste system had to be abolished as a roadblock to social and economic advancement. Now we can see the overview of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The well-known Indian lawyer, economist, politician and social reformer Bhimarao Ramji Ambedkar, also known as Baba Saheb Ambedkar, lived from 1891 to 1956. He is recognized as one of the most influential figures in Indian history and the creator of the Constitution of India. Ambedkar was born into a low-caste household in the modern-day Madhya Pradesh town of Mahau. He excelled intellectually and went on to achieve many degrees, including a law degree from the University of London, despite experiencing prejudice and discrimination because of his caste. Ambedkar battled the caste system throughout his life and sought to advance social justice and equality for everyone, regardless of caste or origin. He was an outspoken supporter of Dalits' rights, formerly known as untouchables, a community that endured significant prejudice and injustice in Indian society. Ambedkar was a member of the Constituent Assembly, which produced the Indian Constitution in 1949 and was actively involved in the Indian independence movement. He significantly influenced the Constitution's clause on untouchability, affirmative action, and fundamental rights. As the nation's first law minister, following its independence in 1947, Ambedkar contributed to the creation of a legal framework that safeguards the rights of all citizens. Ambedkar is still highly regarded and revered in India today, especially by Dalits and other disadvantaged groups. The world continues to study and honor his contributions to Indian society, particularly his work on the Constitution. Ambedkar cared for the rights of other oppressed groups in addition to Dalits, including women, laborers, and religious minorities. His efforts contributed to developing a more inclusive and equitable society in India because he believed social justice was necessary for a just and democratic society. Ambedkar made several significant contributions to Indian society that have had a substantial impact on the country's social, political, and cultural landscape. He continues to be a significant symbol of social justice and equality, and his principles continue to inspire people throughout India and the rest of the world. However, Gandhi's malleable views on the Varna system provide the main context for the divergent viewpoints of Gandhi and Ambedkar. Now, we can see the relevance of The Gandhi-Ambedkar debate. Gandhi's concept of Hinduism was based on the Gita and other sacred writings rather than on what the priests and general public were doing and advocating. He unquestionably supported the Varna system. He considered it to be entirely functional, devoid of any implications of hierarchy or injustice. He was referring to our interdependence when he said that we could all merge into one Varna. To him, practicing untouchability was the worst human sin. He claimed that it was nothing more than the caste system's excrescence. He was a staunch supporter of intercaste relationships and marriages. He didn't, however, find anything wrong with Hinduism in its purest form, and he clung to it. Gandhi is referred to as the savior of the status quo. He needs more narrative coherence. Gandhi's opinion can run counter to one another. This is a common accusation leveled at him. Gandhi, however, did not feel sorry for it because he maintained that no one had complete knowledge of anything, especially something as esoteric as religion. He basically moved from one truth to another throughout his life. Gandhi also had to take the Indian populace as a whole according to his socio-political environment. It would have taken longer for India to get independent from foreign dominance if he had simply spoken up for the outcasts and the untouchables. When establishing, he began a 9-month, 12,500-mile national tour on November 7, 1933, and it lasted all the way through. The journey sparked a lot of enthusiasm for removing the barriers separating the untouchables from the rest of the Hindu community, but it also stoked the Orthodox Hindus' militancy. Gandhi was utilizing a double-edged rope for stability. His idea of untouchability can be simply understood from the following lines. It is wrong to treat certain human beings as untouchables for birth. It is also wrong to entertain false scruples about touching a dead body, which should be an object of pity and respect. It is only out of consideration of health that we bathe after handling a dead body or after an application of oil or a shave. A man who does not bathe in such cases may be looked upon as a dirty, but surely not as a sinner. A mother may be untouchable so long as she has not bathed or washed her hands and feet after cleaning up their child's mess. But if a child happened to touch her, it would not be polluted by the touch. In simpler terms, he did not validate the caste system entirely, but by supporting the Hindu religious beliefs, he consequently was apologetic towards the Varna system. This ideology went completely against what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed in. On the other hand, born into a Dalit family, Dr. Ambedkar was a vocal opponent of India's caste system. He considered India's social inequalities to be a social ill stemming from the caste system. The Dalits, formerly known as untouchables, and other lower castes, according to Ambedkar, were oppressed and subjugated by the upper castes in the caste hierarchy. Ambedkar stated that the caste system did not promote social mobility or equal chances since it was founded on prejudice and inequality. He thought that the caste system needed to be eliminated entirely as the only option. Ambedkar pushed for the establishment of a society based on equality, justice and fraternity, as well as the elimination of caste-based prejudice. In order to ensure Dalits' representation and upliftment, Ambedkar also argued for the establishment of separate electorates and quotas for them in government employment and education. He believed that education might give the Dalits the capacity to end the cycle of prejudice and persecution. Gandhi asked the high caste Hindus to help the oppressed and the inferior rather than supporting a concept like a separate electorate. Affirmative action programs for lower castes were eventually included, and caste-based discrimination was ultimately outlawed as a result of Ambedkar's work and activism. The caste system in India was viewed from diverse angles by Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Although they both acknowledged the injustices and discrimination experienced by lower caste, their approaches to addressing it were different. Difference in perspectives. Gandhi believed that the nation could never be independent if it continued to be dependent on the masters for its material needs, education and social peace. Gandhi fully understood that the oppressed, or the Harijans as he called them, were bound to the village, so the village structure was the utmost concern of his scheme. However, his love for the village was not that of a mystic or an orthodox, not one bound by tradition alone. While B.R. Ambedkar anticipated freedom to be bestowed by the imperial rulers, Gandhi believed that freedom was never to be given, it must be wrested from power by those who demand it and intend to use it. In contrast to B.R. Ambedkar, Gandhi was not restricted by dogmatic considerations in this regard and favored a proper constitution to operate a democracy. Constitutional rigidity and complexity were not a part of Gandhi's worldview. Gandhi's approach to this was straightforward. He believed that free India government would establish a constitution that was appropriate for the genius of the Indian people and one that had formed without outside influence and that was guided by wisdom rather than a foreign power. Gandhi had little regard for the parliamentary system of government, despite B.R. Ambedkar has accepted it as the model of independent India. Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar held different opinions about the essence of application of democracy as a form of government. Swadeshi and Swaraj were established during the Gandhian era for all people, not only the few who had access to Western culture. This included the destitute and previously excluded outcasts. However, he anticipated that caste-based mobilization and confined uplift through public employment and state-regulated aid were only marginally effective, so the politics of automation was different from the method used. This distinguishes between Gandhi and Ambedkar. The latter advocated caste-based mobilization and uplift primarily via the use of state instruments. Gandhi and Ambedkar both participated in politics and social activism. Certain categories in B.R. Ambedkar's philosophy were very rigid, whereas Gandhi's ideology and principles were flexible, with the exception of his unwavering commitment to non-violence. On the other hand, B.R. Ambedkar had a tendency towards liberal philosophy and associated institutional framework and structures. B.R. Ambedkar too had a strong sense of castes. Gandhi did not identify only with his caste or with his religion, rather than these two factors were minor partners in the formation of his political and cultural identities. While Gandhian politics demonstrated Indian unity, B.R. Ambedkar's politics highlighted the country's division. Gandhi argues and establishes in Hindu Swaraj that India was always a country before imperial control began, and that the British were the ones who shattered their cultural cohesion. According to B.R. Ambedkar, the colonial state's introduction of British legal system led to the unification of India. Gandhi was fully aware of the dark side of colonial power, including how it pitted various groups and factions in India against one another. Domestic pressures in Britain and the country's flattering economy made this necessary. B.R. Ambedkar was keen to take advantage of these circumstances because he believed that the colonial state would sincerely work to improve a lot of the underprivileged strata. In this way, he had faith in the colonial political system. For Gandhi, true freedom is Gram Raj, which is Ram Raj. However, B.R. Ambedkar strongly disagreed with this because the status quo nature of Indian villages denies freedom, equality and fraternity. According to him, the Indian village system is nothing to be proud of, rather we should be embraced by it. B.R. Ambedkar did not agree with Gandhi's strategy of referring to the depressed and untouchables as Harijan, as he saw it as a calculated attempt by Gandhi to give the untouchables a pejorative name. As a result, B.R. Ambedkar objected and quit the depressed class league after Gandhi renamed it as Harijan Seva Sangh, reasoning that for Gandhi, the elimination of untouchability was simply a platform and not a serious program. B.R. Ambedkar, in contrast to Gandhi, believed that religion should be centered on relationships between people rather than just on relationship between people and God. In the same way as Gandhi did, B.R. Ambedkar sought to reform and rebuild Hinduism rather than completely eradicate its harmful practices. Now we can see the caste question between Ambedkar and Gandhi. In India, there has long been a social and religious hierarchy known as the caste system. It separates society into various social classes or castes, with each caste having a unique function and social standing. A person's caste is decided by their parents' caste because the caste system is mostly based on birth and it is an ascribed status. As we all have discussed earlier, the Brahmins, that is the priests and the academics, followed by Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers, Vaishyas, the merchants and traders, and Shudras, the laborers, were the four basic castes that made up of traditional caste system. Here, the Dalits, also known as untouchables, were severely discriminated against and oppressed since they were thought to be outside the caste system. The caste system significantly shaped social relationships, marriage, customs and economic prospects in Indian society. While those in lower castes experience discrimination and have fewer opportunities, those in higher castes often hold positions of power and enjoy social and economic privileges. India's social and economic progress has been significantly hampered by the system, which has sustained social and economic inequality. Affirmative actions, policies have been put in place in modern India to remedy the historical persecution of lower caste, which is prohibited in the country. However, social and economic disparities continue and the caste system is still firmly entrenched in Indian society. The caste system must be abolished in order for India's social and economic growth to move forward. Gandhi's idea and convictions regarding Varnashrama Dharma, the caste system and untouchability were wholly based on the grotesque customs of the so-called Brahminical Hindu religion. His stance on the Varnashrama Dharma and caste systems did not inspire India's laboring people. he promoted the protection of the cow in a far broader sense than what is currently accepted. He did not reject the worship of ideals. Naturally, he supported the caste system and Varnashrama Dharma. He accepted the idea that men are born into families. He argued in favor of the hereditary Varna system and emphasized that man's Varna is decided by his birth. Additionally, a particular Varna's occupation was determined by the principle of inherited professions of his ancestors. To describe untouchables, he came up with the phrase Harijan. Gandhi himself was utterly averse politically to criticizing caste institutions. It was very discouraging and contradictory how he felt about caste and untouchability issues. In order to secure the interest of the low peoples, Ambedkar stressed the significance of putting the rule of law and constitutional protections into practice. Gandhi placed more emphasis on political than social transformation. However, Ambedkar was recognized as a social justice icon. He played a significant role in India's Dalit movement. His humane treatment of the caste and untouchability issues shook the Hindu caste system and untouchability to its very core. Ambedkar's opinion and concepts regarding caste and untouchability were wholly based on the principle of science, liberty, equality, fraternity, and ultimately nationality. He fiercely disagreed with the institution of caste and untouchability and its inhumane workings. Ambedkar claimed that the emergence of caste divisions was mostly due to the superimposition of endogamy upon exogamy. A society's separation into groups was a natural occurrence, and via exclusion, these groupings evolved into castes. The division of labor was not the foundation for caste. Essentially, it was a division of labor. He proposed to annihilate the caste system. He asserted that intercaste marriage would be essential to minimizing and resolving caste issues. He placed a strong emphasis on using scientific knowledge, logic tests, and logistic arguments to improve man's condition. He urged the general populace to reject the so-called Shastras, antiquate, illogical and inhuman ruling as well as the socio-religious practices they mandated, which were responsible for caste systems and untouchability in Hindu culture, to make every man and woman free from the thraldom of the Shastras, cleanse their minds of the pernicious notions founded on the Shastras, and he or she will interdine and intermarry, was one of his most significant recommendations. Even life's pathway were tightly segregated by caste. In addition to this, the class was confined to an enclosed caste by the ruling on the caste regulations governing intermarriage, interdining and endogamy. It actually, the Sati ritual, which mandated forced widowhood, celibacy for the widower and marriage to a girl who was not yet ready for marriage, among other practices, was what ultimately kept endogamy against exogamy in the caste system. He was a supporter of social democracy. He battled for the benefit of all people. Instead of political reform, he placed more emphasis on social reform. On the other hand, Gandhi's thoughts and opinions were wholly developed in Gujarati journal Navajivan in 1921 to 1922. In this journal, Gandhi discussed his opinions on several of the country's pressing social issues at the time, including the caste system, untouchability and others. He had a strong belief in incarnation theory, the Varnashrama Dharma and the caste system. He asserted that caste system served as the cornerstone on which Hindu society was able to stand, without which the foundation of Indian society could not have been formed of granite. In addition, he claimed that the caste system contained the seeds of Swaraj. He claimed that several castes were comparable to various military divisions' parts. Every division was working to make the total better. Gandhi advocated for the caste system as a tenet of Hindu religion. In India, it had received a religious veneer. Other nations were denied the opportunity to benefit from the caste system because they did not understand its significance. However, India had benefited greatly from the caste system from the start. Gandhi passionately disagreed that anyone who wanted to abolish the caste system. Gandhi was therefore a major defender and proponent of the caste system. As a strong supporter of the caste system in 1922, he had a significant impact. On February 3rd of 1925, he voiced his disapproval of the caste system. Gandhi claimed that because the caste system represented restraint, he supported it. But at the time, it meant restrictions rather than restraint. To him, self-control was a magnificent virtue that led to liberation. However, restrictions resulted in a chain that bound the circle. Castes, as they were in existence today, lacked all virtue. They went against the Shastras, that is the principles. Castes existed in an infinite number. Intermarriage was prohibited under the caste system. It wasn't a prerequisite for elevation. This was a season of atom. Gandhi provided a solution to this situation as a result. The best solution, he noted, would be from a small cases to merge into one large caste. In order to recreate the former system of the four varnas, there should be four large castes. Gandhi wrote a book in Gujarati on Varna Vyavastha and explained his Varna system in the following manner. They are the divisions into Varna based on birth. Nothing in the Varna system would make it difficult for Sudras to learn or study military tactics for offense or defense. A member of one Varna could learn the science or art necessary to specialize in any field that belonged to one of the other Varnas. His Varna system had no restrictions on who could learn about any of the topics covered by the four Varnas. But in terms of how to make a living, a person had to adhere to the profession of the Varna to which he belonged. The Varna system was designed to stop competitiveness, class conflict and class warfare. Varna refers to the choice of a man's career before his birth. A man in this Varna system had no freedom to select his line of work. His vocation was genetically predetermined for him. Ambedkar criticized the Gandhian Varna model or caste model for this reason. Gandhi's Varna model or the caste model was not founded on the democratic ideal. It went directly against democratic principles. According to Ambedkar, his comments on these topics were entirely based on illogical and unrealistic viewpoints. According to Rousseau, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. In order to measure the voice of the common people, the Hindus linked the four sections of the society in chains. Ambedkar was adamantly opposed to Gandhian social philosophy's approach to elementary education, dissemination and to court rulings addressing various problems. He claimed that caste was not the only tool available to address these issues. It was the absolute worst way to handle these urgent problems. Raising caste-based military formation was a wonderful and utopian idea. Due to the inherited occupational theory's existence, These were both impossibly and unthinkably impossible. Despite the fact that their target audiences overlapped in some places, Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi had different audiences in mind. Both parties used various communication and mobilization strategies. Gandhi talked in simple terms and even did so in their native tongue. Because he had no significant support outside of Maharashtra, B.R. Ambedkar was forced to rely on the English educated local leaders. He delivered his speeches inside Maharashtra in English, but unlike Gandhi, his movement needed the second level elite or leadership. His listeners were also poor and ignorant. Untouchability was one of many issues that Indian society faced, but to B.R. Ambedkar, it was the only issue that held his attention. Gandhi was more concerned with the issue in the present and tried to apply a practical solution for its eradication, while B.R. Ambedkar conducted a thorough historical analysis of the issue. Gandhi belonged to the Vaishya caste, which was not affected by issues associated with untouchability, while B.R. Ambedkar was an insider in terms of caste-based impediments. To sum up, even though the untouchability was identified by both Gandhi and Ambedkar as a primary threat to the social order, and their strategies for eradicating it varied. Ambedkar favored using legal and constitutional means to accomplish this, whereas Gandhi viewed it as a moral stain that could be removed through atoning deeds. According to Ambedkar, relying solely on the change of heart is insufficient. Legal and constitutional remedies must also reinforce moral atonement. Gandhi believed that the constitutional system had only very limited application, and he supported remedies for the bad that were moral and conscience related. Both were reformers driven by the urgent need to restructure the dysfunctional order. Before Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar, there were some numerous and diverse forms of nationalism and patriotism expression that belonged to the pre-1857 and post-1857 eras. These periods, social, political and religious developments had a significant impact on how they viewed the world. Gandhi was very concerned about the politicization and emancipation of the untouchables because he did not want them to feel excluded from the Hindu system. This was of utmost importance of B.R. Ambedkar, but it had to be accomplished by excluding themselves from the Hindu community. Gandhi disagreed with the idea of creating majority-minority communities. In conclusion, though they had different strategies, Gandhi and Ambedkar both had significant contributions to make in the struggle against the caste system in India. Gandhi believed in the reform of the caste system and the promotion of inter-caste peace, while Ambedkar called for its total abolition. As a result of their efforts and campaigning, lower castes were eventually given affirmative action programs, and caste-based discrimination was eventually outlawed, having a tremendous impact on Indian culture. Thank you.